Ready? Play.
Well, hello there, and welcome to Talking Tennis. And this is the final version of my WTA power ranking ahead of Wimbledon. This is, for those who may be not familiar, maybe didn't catch the first video, although I think a few of you did. This is my ranking of likelihood of who I think is going to win the Wimbledon title in the women's draw. If you watch the previous video, you will know what I said before, but this time it's going to be different. I'm going to go through how it's different. I'm going to do a little bit about why players are where they are. But in the interest of keeping this video short, you probably won't hear a lot of reasoning, but feel free to reach out to me on X or Threads, and we can have a conversation about it. Twitter, also, if you are, if you prefer that platform. But yes, I wanted to, before going into my top 10, do a few honorable mentions. I'm not going to go too into detail because for time, but I want to shout out a few names of people. So I'll start with the people who were on my last power ranking, my initial version, before being removed, because they're not going to appear in this new updated list. And those players are Naomi Osaka, whose momentum seems to have stalled a bit since that Swiatek match in Roland Garros and that initial promising start in Rosmalen. Then we have Danielle Collins has not made my top 10 this time. And that's just because she was looking good. But again, her momentum stalled a bit and she hasn't played a grass court warm-up. And that's going to play an impact because for me to favour someone, they're going to have to play something on grass before going into Wimbledon. And whilst Collins' game on paper suits it, she still needs to practice the movement and get used to that in a match scenario. So I'm not putting her in my top 10 this time. Other honorable mentions, people might be disappointed there aren't going to be any Brits in my top 10. Katie Boulter was in the running, and I think if she wins Eastbourne, then I'm going to wish I did put her in my list, because that would make her unbeaten on grass over two tournaments. The reason why I've left her off is because whilst she has been very impressive on grass in the recent year or so, I think that she's yet to get a really big win in her career, like a top 4, top 5 win. No, actually, she's been Jessica Pegula, so a top 4 win, like really push the current top 4. And so for that reason, I struggle to bump her into the top 10. But I think it's plausible. I would just like to actually have seen it happen to push that over the ledge. Emma Raducanu was also not on my top 10. A Twitter user did suggest her. I'm recording this about 15 minutes after she beat Jessica Pegula for what is her first top 10 victory in her career. Big result for Emma, big on grass. She seems to be building for something at Wimbledon. And I would love to believe that something special is going to happen. I just need a little bit more from it, but we'll see. I think it's plausible. And we could, if we're talking about Emma Raducanu, Wimbledon champion, I think I'd have a look at her face if I didn't mention her. But I think there are a lot of other players who are maybe a little bit more likely. But let's see where this momentum takes her. Another player who was mentioned to me on Twitter, I want to give a shout out to, Karolina Muchova. First tournament back after injury in Eastbourne. Yeah, she's not played for the entire first half of 2024. So it might be a bit too soon to predict Karolina Muchova winning Wimbledon. But the slam is plausible. It just might be a bit too soon in the comeback to predict that she's going to win a Grand Slam title. So who did take the top 10 spots? Number 10, Mira Andreeva. Okay. You're probably thinking, hang on, is Mira really more likely to win Wimbledon than Emma Raducanu or Karolina Muchova? And I'm like, I have to acknowledge the fact that this is a prodigy here. She had an amazing grass court debut last year. Yeah, she didn't get off to a great start this year, but losing to Jastrzębska in 3 is not bad on your first match on the surface. She's proved herself against the best players in the world recently, beating a admittedly injured Sabalenka. But out of a competitive field, why not go for the wonder kid for kind of an outsider spot on your top 10? I certainly think that second week, maybe even a quarterfinal, would not be a surprise for Andreeva. Let's be honest, she was so close to it last year, and let's not forget, it's been 20 years since another Russian 17-year-old won Wimbledon, Maria Sharapova. The player who beat Andreeva to the quarterfinals last year, dramatically, Madison Keys is number 9. Keys is always a factor on grass. She's started strong in Eastbourne, and she's had, after a bit of a difficult start, like a really strong clay season, I think she's building momentum, building confidence. She's got points to defend, but I think for me, Madison Keys rated quite highly on my system, and so I think she deserves a spot as someone who could make waves at Wimbledon. Again, second week, definitely on the cards. Quarterfinals is realistic. Let's see if she can push further. Number 8, Victoria Azarenka. She's been super consistent all year and did well in Berlin, getting to the semi-finals. In many ways, on that basis, she's the closest fit for the Vondrousova role compared to last year. Vondrousova last year, again, super consistent in some of the big tournaments, going regularly to last 16s, was picking up points, was probably on track for being seeded for a slam off the base of the first half of the year. Let's face it, wasn't a player that anyone would really look at normally, but then got a strong start on grass. Now, Azarenka's grass court record and CV overall is a little bit more significant than Vondrousova's was when she won. But I don't think you get many people backing her to win the title. And she got to the semi-finals here in 2012. Something could happen here with Azarenka. And let's not forget her super close match with Svitolina last year. That was one of the best matches all season. Speaking of Vondrousova, she's number 7. Marketa Vondrousova is the defending champion. It would be foolish not to put the defending champion in your top 10 power ranking for the following year. She actually started pretty well in Berlin before her fall, and she is a factor if she is healthy. The fact that she's number 7 and she's dropped a couple of places in the power ranking. So I think she was number 5 last time. She's dropped 2 places. Azarenka was number 7. She dropped 1. Vondrousova, the injury is playing a role here, and this is why I can't get super optimistic for her. We don't know how she is. She seems to be in Wimbledon, so that's a good sign. I think she'll play, and then it's just going to come down to how is she going to do with that sort of defending champion mantle around her, and how will she do when she's once again stacked up with the very, very best. Number 6, Ons Jabeur. Always a factor at Wimbledon. 2 finals in last 2 years. She hasn't had a grass court title this year, which she didn't last year, to be fair. But I think last year proved that you should never write off Ons Jabeur. She will always be in the mix at Wimbledon on grass for as long as she's fit. And don't forget, in Berlin, she pushed Goff whilst very ill. She retired looking very rough after an hour, after losing a super tight first set tiebreak. Like, she was fighting her way through it. Imagine if she was fully fit and healthy. Would she have done better in Berlin? Ons Jabeur is a factor on grass. You have to include her. Home stretch now. Number 5, Jessica Pegula. Raducanu is not a bad loss. she's a Grand Slam champion after all, and she's a Brit. And Pegula was coming off playing in Berlin and obviously having to adjust and everything else like that. The Berlin champ has always done well at Wimbledon the last 3 years, making at least second week. And there's an element where Pegula has unfinished business at Wimbledon. Let's not forget, she was up in the deciding set against Marketa Vondrousova before the rain delay disrupted her momentum. She's got her confidence back. Her game works really, really well on grass. It's all going to come down to matchups later on. But yeah, right now, she's a fighter. She seems to be back where she belongs. And I'm looking forward to seeing what she can produce at Wimbledon. But I'm pretty confident we're going to see her in the second week and maybe even deep into that. So Jessica Pegula is a new entry on the list. Number 4. Now, here's the thing before I go into this. The top 4 actually moved around a fair bit in between now and this recording. There are several versions of my power ranking with this completely shuffled around. You might be then disappointed to hear that number 4 has actually stayed the same as Coco Gauff. She looked good in Berlin and arguably has the most grass momentum of the top 4. On that basis alone, she could have been, well, she could have been number 1 on the list. But there are still, I think there are players out there who are potentially stronger, not necessarily on grass, but maybe a bit more at home at Wimbledon. And that's why I think she's dropped down a bit, but it's very, very close. And for me, very much a title contender. Number 3, and it pains me to say it, is still Iga Swiatek. She's not the outright favourite for the title. She isn't. She probably won't be at Wimbledon unless she wins it. She's not had any grass court matches to warm up. Maybe some would say she shouldn't be this high, but she's Iga Swiatek, and she is a tier 1 contender. Nobody would be surprised if she won this title. I just struggle to put her as number 1, despite the fact she's on a winning streak, despite the fact she's clearly special, because the grass court prep isn't there, and because there are 2 other players who are much, much more comfortable on the surface involved in this draw. That's the only reason she's number 3. I would not be surprised if she won the title. Number 2, Aryna Sabalenka. Still number 2. She's so consistent at slams, and she's been getting closer to a Wimbledon final when she's played. She's played 2 of the last 3 years. She reached the semi-finals. Both those semi-finals won 3 sets. I think that shoulder problem that she had in Berlin was precautionary. I don't think that it's going to play too much of a role here. I'm going to be on the optimistic side because, let's face it, these tennis players are used to recovering from these things, and trying to guess injuries is difficult, so you can't weigh too much in there. But yeah, Sabalenka on grass is at home. I think she's going to be at least the semi-finals here at Wimbledon. It would be a surprise if she wasn't, depending on who she played. Not the title favourite, though, because it's still Elena Rybakina as my number 1 on my power ranking. She ticks every box. Her base game on grass is so good. She always bounces back from illness. I know she had to retire again, but she always bounces back whenever she is able to do really well in the next event. I think being a Wimbledon titleist helps, but yeah, Berlin quarterfinalist, doing really well at the biggest events of the year, like usually like a couple of Masters 1000 finals, quarterfinals in Roland Garros. She's a factor at pretty much every tournament she plays, and I think her base game on grass is good enough to carry her to at least the semi-finals. And then after that, who knows? That experience of winning Wimbledon before, feeling at home, that tips her, for me, into being the overall favourite for the title. And it's going to take, I think it takes a lot to upset her. Let's not forget, Jabeur had to take her down in 3. Actually, Rybakina hasn't lost. a grass court match in straight sets since Shelby Rogers beat her in Den Bosch in 2022. So there's a stat for you. She's won a set in every single grass court match she's played since then. That's over 2 years ago. Not counting the retirement, obviously, against Azarenka in Berlin, because it wasn't a completed set. There you go. That's my WTA power ranking for Wimbledon. Let us know what you think. Would you swap some people around? Would you have Emma Raducanu or Karolina Muchova in your top 10? Or Danielle Collins, someone else I haven't mentioned? Is there anyone in there who doesn't belong? Am I being optimistic about Andreeva or Azarenka? Have I got my top 4 completely wrong? Should I put Goff first? Should I put Iga first? I want to know what you think. Get in the comments and let me know. Let us know. But yeah, for a recap, number 10, Mira Andreeva. Number 9, Madison Keys. Number 8 is Victoria Azarenka. Number 7, Marketa Vondrousova. Number 6, Ons Jabeur. Number 5, Jessica Pegula. Number 4, Coco Gauff. Number 3, Iga Swiatek. Number 2, Aryna Sabalenka. And number 1, Elena Rybakina. Tune in for more Talking Tennis content. For the rest of this week, we have got a draw preview coming up on Friday. We're going to react to it live. And then ATP and WTA Weekly will break down all the draws and all the repercussions, and we will see how the power ranking affects how we see those draws playing out before Wimbledon itself starts on Monday. I'm so excited. I hope you are too. And hopefully I will see you at some point in another video. But until then, take care and keep talking tennis.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.